We are live. There is one viewer. We are definitely live. So I don't know who's here, but we are live.
Hey everyone.
Hey, everyone. I'm Zora with this is by Rig by Design. I have a special guest with me today. Her name is Naita Green. She is the CEO and founder of Diversity Community for Democracy. And we're going to have a lot of points that we will be discussing today. Today, we also are going to be discussing two things that may seem unrelated: housing, disability rights. But we just got finished, Naita and I just got finished having a discussion. I believe they're all related, but she may not necessarily believe that they're all related, and that's okay with us. But in my opinion, they're connected by a strategy called flooding the zone, where you are create so many crises at once and nobody is able to focus on one single thing. And today I really do want to focus in on what the reason why Naita is here today. Just to give everyone an FYI, Jason will be joining us midstream, so I may have to catch him up. He had a dentist appointment with his for his daughter, and so he'll be joining us as soon as he returns by that. Nita, I would like you to talk a little bit about yourself right now. Tell me what you're working on right now.
So I am the CEO and founder of Disability Community for Democracy, which was started after the election in 2024 because both parties actually ignore the disability community. So I was like, well, we need to do something, and for me it's about who's in power, right? Like that's what that is about for me, is that it's not about it's not about, the current occupant and his co-conspirators or Project 2025, because we're dealing with a lot of the same issues around reinstitutionalization and housing for people with disabilities in democratic states. So that's why I feel very strongly that this is a human problem versus a political problem. And also the history of disability rights in this country. We wouldn't have Section 504 that's under the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 if it wasn't for Nixon. Actually, wouldn't have the EPA either if it wasn't for Nixon. I mean, I just like to keep it real. We wouldn't even have some of the expanded voting rights in the Voting Rights Act if it wasn't for Reagan. We wouldn't have the ADA and an expansion of the ADA if it wasn't for George H.W. Bush, who signed the ADA initially, and then his son, who basically said, nah, the Supreme Court got it wrong, and it issued amendments to it. So that's why I come at it from more of a human lens, not a not the policy paper of 2025, given, both parties treat disability like an afterthought.
Yeah, disabilities is a nonpartisan issue, is basically what I'm hearing from you. And I would agree with you with that. Um, so, how did you move forward into this type of work?
I've have a disability. I've been disabled my whole life. I'm a kid of the 80s and came of age in the 90s. And if you want to use like 25 as like, your brain is fully matured, then you would say the early 2000s, right?
Mhm.
And so for me, the way I see the world is through the lens of 504 was there, but segregation was still the norm in a lot of ways. Like, yeah, you had to educate people. We had to make sure people with disabilities got accessible education, but segregation was the norm. And and when the ADA was signed into law, I was in middle school then. Um, that changed my world because I was able to say, when I was, graduating, I don't want to be in resource room all 4 years of high school. And they had to give me my accommodations, which before they didn't necessarily have to. And so that's why what has changed the uh world for me is how the ADA and then Olmstead, because I've have been institutionalized due to my other disabilities. Like I have some, psychiatric things. And even in the 90s before the Olmstead decision, they would keep people even in private institutions longer than necessary because stabilization was not the goal like it is now because of the Olmstead decision.
And so the reason why you're on here today, and that brings us over into, is that the Olmstead decision was very important to the disability community. And so that's the reason why you're on here today. What has happened with the DOJ?
DOJ issued, I have a question. Can I
Yes, you can
be
have
very
questions.
colorful in my language, but not
You,
cursing,
c- but
but
the name of my publication is Bullshit Free Zone. So yes, you can be very
okay.
colorful and
Okay, this non-intelligent circular memo saying that the Olmstead decision doesn't say what the Olmstead decision says, and that how it was affirmed via courts is wrong, and that
right. They're claiming the interpretation was incorrect.
even though it's been almost 3 decades that
Correct.
it's been interpreted this way, and Stephen Miller, who is very problematic in every sort of situation in our country right now, is basically saying, "Hmm, nope, you don't have to, um, what the DOJ is doing is out of pocket," basically, w with the executive order that came out the week I think it was like a day or 2 before the 35th anniversary of
4 days.
the yeah, of the, Americans with sightings
Olmstead. Right.
no, I'm not talking about Homestead, but
Okay.
I'm linking the 2, why they wrote this memo. There's a couple pieces that are happening here. So, the memo was written due to Stephen Miller's influence because the DOJ was forcing states to do their job and follow the law, right? There's also a lawsuit happening with 6 states suing the federal government under the expanded regulations of the integration mandate of 504 under the Biden administration, and there are 6 states that are saying, "Nope, we don't have to do that." Those regulations that were written based on the Olmstead decision. And so we have 2 of these things happening at once, and of course, we have RFK's influence in all of this. And as much as, Stephen Miller is the one who's like kind of sort of, is the one who's saying, why is the DOJ doing all of this? It's really RFK as far as I am concerned, because he's the one. I'm wearing a no autism registry shirt from my organization's store website.
I'm
It's
glad that you brought up RFK because I was making that similar link. Considering all the rhetoric RFK has been talking about the autism community is mind-boggling to me.
and
Maybe it's the
SSRIs and
I, cor-
saying and
correct.
saying saying how they're more addictive than heroin, which there is not any proof of that, and saying like they're very addictive, whatever. And I'm like, look, any sort of drug, any sort of medication that you're taking for a very long time, you need to taper off of. Like, like it
Most definitely, most definitely. But most of those drugs penetrate the brain barrier from a
right.
biological side. And so, yes, eventually it's going to. have additional effects. I do have a son that suffers from epilepsy. He's part of the disability community. He became disabled as a very young adult upon graduating high school. Long story there. As a result of that, I understand how many of these medications affect the brain, and he has to take medications in order to control some of his seizures. So definitely understand that. But I do want to bring it back to the whole DOJ. Basically, what the DOJ is right now, and I think you're trying to get the words out, is what they did in this memo is they shift power to the states. And so that what the memo explicitly argues is that states should be allowed to decide for themselves. And so, what you're arguing is no, that's not the purpose of it. And the states do need to have these parameters in place. Otherwise, the states are, some of these states, especially the 6 states that are now arguing against implementing the 504 states, will then not implement it. And then what will happen from there? Marginalize this community.
People with disabilities, and it's not just the states. I'm going to expand this. It's also our U.S. territories because we talk a lot about the 50 states in D.C.,
Mhm.
but a lot of this plays into Medicaid funding and the way Medicaid funding is doled out, depending on which territory you live in, which programs you qualify for, and so these territories um, are pretty much all of them are majority minority. Puerto Rico is interesting because they consider Puerto Rico majority minority, but as a Puerto Rican myself, that's not necessarily true. Most Puerto Ricans, and I say this as somebody who has like my mom's father is Puerto Rican. He was white. Most Puerto Ricans
Right.
are white. They just don't
Yeah,
want to allow them to be white. That's the difference. So, with the exception of Puerto Rico, having an honest conversation about Puerto Rico, um,
absolutely.
is that these territories are also gonna use it as, well, the federal government said that we don't have to do this, and because we have it's a really technically three-tier citizenship system in this country because DC, DC can vote for president, but they can't, they don't have House and Senate reps. If you live in the territories, out you can vote in the primaries, but you can't vote for president. You don't have voting representation in Congress. So we have a three-tier citizenship in this country. And then within our, 50 states where there's representation, it's depends on which state you live in. And so this is also gonna allow blue quote unquote blue states like California and New York to say, well, this DOJ memo said this. It kind of will allow them to justify expanding in who can be committed. That
Well, who can be committed, or I wouldn't necessarily say expanding, but decreasing. It will be decreasing some of the things that some of these states are now currently providing. Um,
the reason why I say expanding is
mhm.
because specifically I'm going to talk about New York specifically. The current governor of New York held up the budget to be able to expand who can be involuntarily committed, and definition of that. That's why I'm
Yeah,
saying
and I get where you're going with that, and we're doing something similar here in California as well.
yeah.
And that's really kind of scary. And the reason why it's scary, you talk about one of these institutions that took place in the 1970s, and it was atrocious. And
Willowbrook.
what was correct? Talk a little
Willowbrook.
bit more about that because we need to understand the history in order not to repeat it.
So there's been a lot of books written on Willowbrook and
Mhm.
other things, and I will say anybody listening on Substack, my friend Alex Green is a historian, dis- disability historian. He can break down the history of all of this stuff. He specifically wrote a book. I don't remember the name of the book; it escapes me. But he wrote a book on somebody in Massachusetts where I currently live, and so it's interesting that we have all of this proof that people were experimented on, people were left in their own they were left
Eugenics.
dirty and, what's it called? They were left dirty and the whole 9 yards, and and Robert, uh, F. Kennedy Sr. in
Mhm,
1965 basically said Willowbrook needed to be closed. This was in 1965. This was 8 years before Gerardo Rivera went in there with a secret camera in 1973, putting the horrors of Willowbrook, which is in Staten Island. I'm from the New York area originally. I grew up in Westchester County. So Willowbrook closed when I was a little girl.
mhm.
So it's for me personally, this is in my lifetime. And I'm like, hell no. And I've worked. So I've been a patient in in like New York City hospitals and county hospitals and in the private hospitals. I've never been in the state hospitals, but but the governmental hospitals are terrible. They're very abusive to patients, regardless if it's city or county or state. They're very abusive, and they have more power to keep you in because they are a government entity versus being in a private hospital. So that's why a lot of people who need, help want to go to a private hospital because you have more power. Unfortunately, that's how the world works. You go to the government for help, you know, and we really need to talk about the fact, I mean, that they've always wanted to do this. They've always wanted to do this. Basically, I will say this, before, um, this is my point, before the current occupant and his co-conspirators, and I'm gonna just say this, they are pieces of crap that are that don't deserve to be are they're so awful. They nobody should want to have them on the bottom of their shoes. Like, they just, as far as I'm concerned, if there was a hell on earth, they you know
They deserve to be there,
they deserve to
and
be there. That's how I feel.
absolutely, absolutely, and I feel the same way. No amount of they are what we used to describe as bottom feeders.
Yes, exactly. I think even bottom feeders are too good.
Maybe have a little bit more. Maybe they're beneath bottom feeders, bottom feeders. So absolutely. And I do want to say this now with this memo. This is an ancient history. These institutions were phased out in the 1970s, but they were phased out for reasons. And these are the governmental institutions. But what this memo is actually doing is bringing back that era. And I think you make a very good point is that we do need more private houses. I remember when here in California during the 1970s, actually it was early 80s here, because many of our government institutions were phased out during the Reagan administration.
Same in New York State, but actually into the 90s too. So
Mhm.
they were phased out under Bush 1 and Clinton. Some of the hospitals were closed even in the early 2000s even.
And so, what do you think is the connection between the disability rights and other civil rights movements?
Oh, the connection is basically like ooh, 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 it's the humanity question, right? Like,
Mhm, correct.
we talked about this before we went on. We could we don't have to agree on how we get there, but humanity isn't up for debate. So I that's why I use the term Crip Crow as a
I'm
person of
glad you
color
brought that up.
because I have gotten some pushback from specifically white disabled people, and I'm like, "Look, I know my history in this country, and it took another 20 years for people with disabilities to even get an education due to another Supreme Court case, and it was Black disabled students in DC who brought that case, and so just because you were Black, if you had a disability after Brown versus Board of Education, could still be segregated and they didn't have to educate you. And I wish people would understand nuance. Like we have to have nuanced conversations around terms. And the reason why I use the term Crip Crow is that we have a history of laws in this country set up by these are local laws called ugly laws. It's 1860s to 1974. I took out a book. I have a book that I went to the library to get because I really want to like do a deep dive on ugly laws because I really want to like talk about it more in terms of the fights that we're having. These institutions want states and cities to bring back ugly laws. That's what they want. Like, and it's because they don't want to use the term because it's politically radioactive, right? And I'm not, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here. It is. People don't like to see people in cages, right? People know about, and I'm going to just use the term that it was used. They know about the freak shows, right? That was the
Oh,
term
yes.
was
Oh,
used.
yeah.
People, when I remember learning about it in history class when I was in high school, and a lot of us were like upset. And so that's one, but also too, just to be clear, they're doing this because they want to weaponize disability. There's a term called protest psychosis. And I know you read my article this morning and I mentioned it. I kept my article very, very brief so people could actually do the work, but I am going to write more about it. They're doing this to be able to start saying, if you dissent in any way, you're problematic. And Black folks, especially Black men, were diagnosed with schizophrenia who had any sort of views on civil rights. And and so this is not my, like, again, where I, like, lie politically on a lot of things, people would be shocked, like, you know, in terms of, like, my political views, but I believe in humanity. And I believe in liberation for people and people to be able to live, have the right, to liberty, life, and
And
happiness and to live the way they want to live. I'm more of like my own business, right? Like we
let me live my life as
right.
I
And so that's why I'm saying the things I'm saying. I'm not trying to scare people. I'm saying like most of us don't know our history well enough and we have these things, cell phones, right? That we have access to information and there are so many people who are willfully ignorant now when you point out to people this is what's going to happen. No, it's not. Well, guess what? When it's your tu madre or your mama or your mommy, whatever term you call your mother, and when they come for her or your father or your siblings and would try to tell you this is the same thing, black women specifically, black men, Jewish women, Jewish people, and the disability community all warned, were screaming, "Don't vote for this man." We all told you, and you didn't listen. And now you're crying in surprise, like, he told you what he was going to do. Did you not
he, he,
mention the first time where he killed almost 1,000,000 people? When the current occupation.
COVID.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I am very upset about this. And I'm also upset that Congress hasn't really said anything. So that's why, you know, you know, second
Well, this is the Congress hasn't said anything because they're flooding the zone. So these type of stories are actually getting buried underneath the news. We're talking about underneath the um, Iranian war, underneath the Social Security Trust Act, underneath what is it now? The reflection pond. What?
they don't pay, but they've never paid attention to disability though. That's
No,
been really the issue. So, like for me, when people say, "Well, they're flooding the zone," disability has never been covered in the
part of the
press.
zone.
Yeah, it has never been covered in the press, regardless of who's in office. So So I agree they are flooding the zone with so much, but they also did it the day before Juneteenth. And so that's a Friday, and so they thought people weren't gonna be paying attention. I found out about it. I'm just gonna tell people how I found out about it. I saw something on it on social on Thursday, but I wasn't really paying attention, and then I got a DM from a subscriber saying this is what happening. I was in a meeting
Mhm.
talking about Northeast regional issues. And and then I got, like, a message from one of the volunteers. Disability Community for Democracy is all run by volunteers, and so I got a message from one of the volunteers wanting to write something about Homestead, and I said, "I'll do it. You need to focus
Okay.
on your stuff." And then I woke up angry. Angry to the point that I did a live and I went off. I went off. I did a solo live. I normally try to be, even if I use, colorful language, cursing or whatever, I try to still use it.
Colloquialisms.
Yeah, I try to maintain a level of decorum, but I just
Mhm.
couldn't.
Right.
I was, like, almost in tears because I know what these institutions have like. I've worked in a state hospital as a m peer advocate in the when the MAD movement was, like, up and, really exploding and, states were investing money in the early 2000s. I was a trained peer advocate, got a certificate from New York that was New York State certified. So I was able to go into state hospitals, to work in them. And I also worked in the state psychiatric clinics. So they're not great places. Even outpatient, they're not great. I mean, they're better than inpatient, but they're not great. And actually, Um, I worked in the county facility briefly as part of my training, um, as well when it went quote unquote privatized, but the employees still worked. Like they were still government employees. They had still had their pensions. Yeah, it was my county. That was like they did it like this semi quasi whatever, and then the county took it back over. And so I know what these facilities are like. And so I'm saying this from personal experience. They're doing this because they don't want housing first. They're doing this because they don't see us as humane. They're not signing the he doesn't want to sign the bill because it has, like,
A
yes,
bipartisan
the
bill,
bill
by the
that
way.
that passed with super majority. So if be just
I and to help you
This
out
makes
here,
me
I know,
so sorry.
I do the same thing. I just lose my words. I don't know,
I just
the words do not come out
Yeah, I just
easily
lost it.
because I'm so angry about it,
It's not even
you know?
angry, I just don't have the words to talk about how the fact that they don't want to he doesn't wanna sign a bill because of the SAVE Act, which he's been told, "You don't have the votes." There are people who are saying, "We're regardless if you eliminate the filibuster in the Senate, we're still gonna vote no." So,
But it goes a
we're
little
not
bit
listening.
deeper than that. It goes a little bit deeper
No,
than that.
I don't wanna go super deep right now because I'm
Right.
going to do
But
that.
when we were talking about the nuance of it, there is a little bit more. Right now, that bill has a possibility of not being passed at all because they are not, they're, I'm trying to think of the term, but it can get veto if the House does not come back to session. And it can be veto, and it most likely will because the House goes um, it becomes a closed house on June the 28th, right before July the 4th. They only had 10 days to get this to become a bill. So that's very important. It's not going to become a bill.
It's not gonna become law. Yeah, I
Right.
understand
I mean, a law. It's not going to
yeah, I
become a law.
understand the nuance on that, but what's gonna happen? Because this is what I think is gonna happen. There's gonna be enough political pressure placed on people in the House specifically, which Mike Johnson even said, like, "We don't have the votes that they can't get it through the Senate. They're not gonna change the filibuster for you. Go away. We'll do it through reconciliation." and try it that way, and he's not having it. It's like, well, fine. Force a vote, like force a vote and let force a vote and see what happened, right? Like they've already tried bringing this to the floor. And this is the other thing. And I think this is where Republicans are now starting to see, like, whatever they do with this person, they should have figured this out under the first administration. That his first term, he wasn't a regime then. That's why I call it the administration. The second, the current occupant and his co-conspirators, like, which is different for a reason. He showed who he was then. I wish people would have just stood up to him then. That even if we would have gotten elected, they should have just um grown up. And that's why I feel the way that I do about this. Like, I'm not trying to link all these, like, people are linking this to, like, all the different issues in the.
And it's what we do here on Rig by Design, because what we're showing is how each one of these things are connected. But it's connected to, as you say, the occupants, I call it the regime. We're not going to go tit for tat over that because of the fact that you and I agree on the humanitarian aspect of this. And so, with that being said,
Hi,
I
Nick.
yes, so Nick is on right now. The reason why I'm doing this show is because of Nick. What ended up happening was I was preparing my notes in order to do our usual Rig by Design. Jason has not been able to join us right now, but when I read this, I was unaware of it because of flooding the zone. I was actually unaware of it. It was something that I missed. And when I read it, I went, oh, shit,
It
you
also
know.
wasn't covered in the press though either. I mean, let's just keep it real here. The only people covered it was Mother Jones and NPR. Was not, and CBS covered it, like, briefly, and I tried to click on the link and I couldn't find it. So this is the reason why I'm saying why I'm pushing back a little bit, because it's also how press covers disability issues. They're not covering it.
No, they're not. They're
And they've never
absolutely
covered
not.
disability issues.
Absolutely not. So,
Nick,
Nick, welcome.
Nick, we can't hear you, my friend. No. Yes.
We are talking.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if it's coming through my mic, my headphones, or the Mac mic. It's coming through something, but I'm glad y'all can hear me. Hey,
Yeah,
everyone.
I have the same
Oh, good to
difficulties
see you.
with the Mac mic.
It's good to meet you.
Yes, Stacy, they should cover this. This is important. Disability issues are important. I don't know the statistics of how many individuals suffer from disabilities. I have a disability, which I do not discuss very much. Um, but what are this? Do you happen to know the?
Almost 30% of the US population, according to CDC the CDC stats.
Okay,
So it's
almost
over.
30%. I think it's higher. And say,
It is probably higher, but I'm I'm just quoting the official stats. That's what like, that's what we have to, unfortunately go by, is that.
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm on basically saying is that yes, I agree with you. This should be covered more. I am thankful that Nick put this out because I immediately got on it and started researching, and I felt that this was a very important for our show today. Nick, what we were just discussing, we were actually discussing the very first topic but we kind of just jumped into the disability part topic, but it was about the Housing Act topic and how the Housing Act actually passed the bill at, very high majority. And we're talking about 358 to 32 in the House of Representatives, as well as, I don't remember, I think it was only 5 senators that descended from the vote, but it's going to be canceled.
Yes. Because Trump is a racist and a misogynist and hates women and hates people of color, hates people of disability status. He's a hateful person. And hateful people will do hateful things when they feel they're about to lose power and when they are losing power and losing control. And we know that at Trump has at least severe narcissistic tendencies, and I would say verging on megalomania, if not there. But I am not a medical doctor, and I'm not a psychologist, so I cannot diagnose, and I will not diagnose him. I'll preface that. I'm just a guy with disabilities myself. I'm just a guy who speaks out, and I have to say thank you to Naida because she brought the decision to my attention right away. She messaged me and was like, "Holy shit, you need to see this." And since then, I have not stopped on this, and I'm not going to stop on this because I'm a disabled veteran. And getting back to the housing stuff, that would impact me too as a disabled veteran. That would impact Naida. That would impact Zora. That would impact so many of us. And the fact that they passed it by that large of a margin shows that pressure worked to get them to do something, which means we have work to do here on other issues. But the fact that he's tying it to restrictive voting and suppressive voting measures shows just how scared he is of the people. And when people come together to force their representatives to do something, we get Congress to have overwhelming votes in the majority that are veto proof unless they decide to put both houses of Congress into recess for over 72 hours. And then there's some fuckery that goes on. I'm sorry if you don't normally swear on your show.
As I informed Nita, if you take a look at the name of my publication, it's called Zora's Bullshit Free Zone. So that kind of tells you where I
Okay.
stand on colorful language or colloquialisms or whatever way you want to fucking to call it. But
It's fuckery what they're doing. They're messing with freedoms. This entire process that the Trump regime is going through right now to force the Save Act vote in any way they can shows just how scared they are because the people are waking up. You can see it. People are mad. People are desperate, are getting desperate. We're nearing desperation for a lot of folks, if not already there or and
I was
well
already
beyond.
there. I was already there
But we're
January the
nearing
20th.
desperation for folks that look like me and you, Zora, on the outside, because others have been there.
Unless they have disabilities. I
Unless
mean,
they have
I
disability.
or they're
unless
marginalized in other ways, because I do wanna be
correct.
clear on that because it's not all white folks
Yes,
who feel
agreed.
this way, and I say this, like, I have white people in my family by marriage and by, not, some of my relatives are not half non-white Hispanics, so I
Yeah,
do
and
wanna say that here.
yeah, and I wanna make sure I'm clear on that too, is Naida and I talk about this a lot, is it's not all, and it can't be because that hurts marginalized communities the most. When we say things like all men, and I'm not saying that to protect myself, because it doesn't bother me. It doesn't impact me
But it
specifically.
does
It
bother me.
does, but it
It does
does
bother
bother.
some men. It
But
does
it does
bother
actually bothers me, and I'm not a man. I don't
Yeah,
take
and it bothers people that are important to me
Mhm.
and that I'm friends with in ways that I'm not going to perpetrate it because I'm not going to perpetrate putting down or marginalizing people who are already marginalized and can't come up. Oh, Lynette, this is going to be all about race and disability. It all ties together.
And it
All
does all
none
blend.
of it is
It,
separate,
it all,
unfortunately.
eugenics
yeah.
is eugenics, just FYI, everybody, eugenics is a pseudo racist science. It's pseudo race science based in racism in ableism. And
Hmm.
ableism is based in racism. And so when disabled folks who don't look who are not black or brown on the outside, right? Because I do have more European than it appears on my face. Uh,
That's another whole discussion
yeah, that's
about
another whole discussion,
yeah,
but I think it's important, like, for people, and also I have class privilege too, right? Like, this also gets into class privilege, why this memo has freaked me out so much, because I have people who volunteer for my organization that rely on caregivers. One of them's in a group home, um, you know, because her parents can't lift her anymore, can't take care of her anymore and do the heavy lifting and stuff. And we don't have the beds. Like, this is the problem when they issue a memo like this and there aren't beds. They're going to, because we don't have the beds, and I've said this to Nick, they're going to put people in prisons and
homeless.
ICE detention, or and people who are homeless. I mean, it's all of this is tied together, and until we, the people, start unifying and understanding that we all don't have to agree. Like, for me, like, I'm gonna just, for example, I have personal issues with abortion and how it's used sometimes with people with disabilities because, the whole genetic testing thing. I am not totally fully like people should have access to abortion 100% of the time, right? I think there needs to be some limits. I also don't think it should be between their doctor, and the doctor should not be going to jail for trying to save somebody's life, right? Like,
Absolutely.
that's and we have to have these nuanced conversations. Why in conservative spaces, why there are actually more kids with disabilities? Because of religion, really, right? They don't believe in it, and there are people like me who feel like people do use abortion as a form of eugenics. That's why we don't have little people anymore in society. That's why we don't have, we don't see as many people with Down syndrome. There's like certain types of disabilities you don't see anymore because people get genetic testing, and they do that. And so they're linked, but they're not perfectly linked, a lot of these issues, and so we need to also talk about it in terms of nuance, and I've been saying this a lot. I've been screaming this to the cows come home. Until the Black community deals with its ableism and actually deals with the fact that it leaves Black disabled folks behind in liberation, and they are not talking about it. They didn't even talk about access to when 208 was declared, when private action for 208 in 2025 by the 8th Circuit was declared, like, nope, private entities can't sue under Section 208. Nobody talked. I did not hear a peep from any Black org, none. But as soon as Section 2, it's like the expectation is disability orgs are supposed to be speaking out. And I'm like, you don't speak out on our issues either. And I will say this, I've experienced more ableism than racism in my life. And I've experienced more homophobia than racism in my life. So, and I'm
Could
just
that
saying
be
it first.
because of where you're located?
No, because I've traveled all over the country.
All
I've lived
right.
in different parts of the country. I've lived in the Pacific Northwest. I live in, and also New England. Like New England's a subregion of the Northeast, and there is differences within, because Nick
I'm from Vermont originally, so I know.
so he knows, like there's like subcultures, like in the Northeast. Like, New England operates very differently than the other states in the Northeast in terms of how they operate. And so it's also, I grew up with class access. I grew up in the suburbs, so I'm a suburban kid, and most of my schools were majority white with access to services, and so that does matter. It matters, and I've heard this. I'm not the only one who's talked about this. I have friends who live in the South who are Black who have said the same thing to me, that they've experienced more ableism than racism, and they are from the South. They've never really left the South, and so this is not
Just
just.
yeah, I didn't mean to
No, it's fine. It's
just
fine.
popped up into my head.
You asked the question. It's reasonable to ask the question because I don't live in the South. You would have
Just
you
popped
would
up into
think.
my head, basically, because I am white, and so I wouldn't know, you know, that answer from my
Right.
perspective, you know? So that's the reason why I asked it.
Mhm.
Um,
I'll show
I
my little coffee mug here because I think it hits that point. Is now you know, so you can grow. Is we have to learn. We have to be willing to ask questions and learn from each other. Like that's my whole experiment right now is asking
learning
questions and
agility,
learning. Yeah,
learning
is the ability
agility.
to yeah, like if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I want to be right when I talk, not because of an ego thing, but because I would rather be right than wrong. Like I'd rather have right information and good context and know things than just be willfully ignorant.
You don't want to spread mal, and disinformation. That's
Correct.
really what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to spread the truth. And I want to hear from stories from people. And I think getting
Oh,
to the
yeah.
heart of the Olmsted thing is this impacts across all communities.
Now, because Substack doesn't allow some of these notes to be, you won't see them when we end this program, basically. So I do want to go through some of the comments and making sure that we're covering everything. And I kind of have to go way far back because they started coming in. So give me a moment.
And Zora, while
It,
you're doing that,
so
I'm going to drop in.
Karma basically says this is taking way too long. You know, the fact that things have to get to this extreme measures for people to wake up is insanity. And I agree with you, Karma. It is taking way too long. But most people don't realize this is going on. And this is part of the reason why we're having this show right now. In order for people to wake up, you have to know what is going on. And so we're having this show so we can get people to wake up. Joe basically says one can be multi marginalized. That is absolutely true. You know, I agree with that sentiment exactly. And someone else said, "Hey, wait, when did this become a race discussion?" Well, I'm going to say this right now. If we don't discuss about race, then how are we going to be able to move forward? It's sort of like saying, well, all lives matter. It's Black Lives Matter. What I would like to say in regards to Black Lives Matters, until Black Lives Matter, then can all lives matter?
Can I also respond to what that person said as well?
Right.
So, in our country's history, we have weaponized disability around race. So there's something called riptomania, you, by this white doctor in the 1850s, that slaves would run away and they would say they were mentally ill because they wanted to be free. And so they talked about cutting off people's toes so they couldn't run away. So if we don't talk about race in terms of disability, and also I'm just gonna be honest, it's a disingenuous comment because the people who are gonna be disproportionately impacted by this Olmsted memo are gonna be people who look like me that don't have the same access, and either in terms of wealth or or education to be able to advocate for themselves. And I don't it's disingenuous to say that race doesn't play a role in any of this in our history, and it always has been this way. If you look at our history of our country, the civil rights movement, every single time there has been movement, has always been there's been some sort of tragedy, some sort of protest, something. So the country has always we have willful ignorance programmed into our country's DNA. So I just want to just say that to people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because race plays a role in everything. that is going on. It doesn't have to be obvious that it's race. It's built into our system. Like it is built into the structure of our system is racism and classism and ableism. We've allowed those to be built into our system, and we have to talk about them hand in hand because they're all from the same hate. It's all based on the same idea of superiority and hate and marginalizing people. That's why that's why I talk about it. Like that's why we expand on it. Like I ensure that I talk about these things because I'm invisibly disabled. Like I'm disabled in an invisible way. You don't see my disabilities as much. I don't walk. I don't have a walker. I don't have a wheelchair. I'm not missing a limb. I am not physically disabled in a way that's physical. I'm not mentally disabled in a way that's physical. And if we forget to talk about all those things, we leave all of those people behind. Like Naida said, until we can, and I can't say it about the Black community, but I can say it about the white community, is until we care about white disabled kids, none of us matter in this case right now because we're all going to be impacted. Until we care about the most marginalized among us, none of this really matters. We lift each other up from the bottom. When we raise the standard of living and we raise the level of society, everybody benefits. But we
Everybody.
have to do it intentionally. We have to do it with the intent to make life equitable and equal for those in our society. And that means we have to talk about where it impacts the most. It's why redlining is still a fucking big issue because that's racism built into our system. That's why the data center discussions that we aren't talking about right now are also really important because that is a new form of redlining.
And that's also
That is,
right. It's a
Yeah, and
good
it's
form
taking
of red
place in poor communities. It's taking place in areas that they think we will not notice. They're taking place in areas in which the people don't necessarily have a voice, you know.
and if we
And
have a voice, we're going to use it.
that's
right.
right.
And it's environmental racism. Just a lot of Black people who are disabled weren't necessarily born with disabilities, but because of their environment that they live in, they develop asthma, all sorts of things that hey, like
That would not
my
have taken place.
it blows my mind as a suburban kid where even the poorest neighborhoods in my city did not have the same rates of it, because economically they were, if you compare economically to New York City, but because in New York City they had higher yeah, the whole everything that I grew up with, right? Like we had green space. Even if you lived in a poorer neighborhood, you can go to walk to get to, neighborhoods that had green space, right? And so I think people got to like understand that. The one thing I will say, you know, before I know Jason's trying to come in and I don't know if it's going to be a problem or not getting
Yeah,
him.
there's the three people on right now, so it's going to be hard to get Jason to come in.
So
So,
I actually have something I have to do, so I gotta hop off. But the one thing I will say to everyone here today, in terms of the work that my organization is doing specifically, we are fighting for liberal democracy no matter who's in power, right? Because I know, like we're trying to pull on threads in all sorts of different directions. And I know a lot of people are saying this current occupant is the problem and his co-conspirators is the problem. No, it's actually both political parties are racist and ableist, and one's more blatant than the other. And the difference is, and I say this as somebody whose politics is, more moderate, more, even more than our one of our mutual friends. I lean uh, more to the right around, and especially around issues of restriction access to guns and stuff like that, right? Like that's just my personal beliefs on that because I know what happens when we restrict things. It harms people with disabilities. We don't talk about these things. We don't talk about these things with nuance. And so until we do, I'm like, no. Right. And so my thoughts is that until we fight for liberation for all people, because they always say, well, Black people are the canaries in the coal mine. I don't I don't agree with that. I don't agree. And I'm saying this as somebody who is a partially Black American. I don't agree with that. I say the disability community are the canaries in the coal mine because it took us the longest to actually get our rights at the federal level
Level.
versus even LGBTQ folks. I'm not talking about the right to marry or anything like that, but I'm saying specifically civil rights. It was a disability community. It took another 20 years for the students were segregated. So if you were
Yeah.
a Gen Xer born between 1965 and 1973, you were in that transition stage. You might have been in segregated education for disabilities, or you didn't get educated at all. My part of Gen X, I'm mid 74 and on, they couldn't do that anymore. My generation and elder millennials, I want to lump them in together because there's a lot of similarities
Yes,
there,
I agree.
have that piece in common where we were the first really not to be segregated. And then I grew up under, I was in middle school when the ADA got signed. So more rights were expanded for me as a disabled student. And so I'm not just trying to fight to keep what we have. I'm trying to make sure that we raise the floor. And and I am going to say this, there are a lot of especially like people who have been in this space for a long time, who are disabled, who I've like mentioned this to, and they're afraid to open the ADA. And I'm like, this is the same conversation we've had around, Black folks who are members of the LGBTQ community who've wanted to open up the Civil Rights Act of 1964. I'm like, look, we cannot be afraid because we've tried. If we look at the history of our country, look at the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s. We've had 3 bills: Civil Rights Acts in 64 and 68, and Voting Rights in 65. We don't have voting rights anymore. They gutted it with removing Section 2 and Section 5 Supreme Court. They're chipping away at disability. We just need a comprehensive civil rights bill for everyone and let them try. Because like Epstein, right? And this is where I go, like, yeah, the housing bill, yeah, there was momentum, but this is really for me like Epstein. We need every single media outlet on Substack to be talking about this. Stop talking about the purity politics of this person's a um, shitty Republican because they're not Democrat. I'm like, how does that help us when they're going to round us up and say that we have, protest psychosis because we're resistant? None of that helps because all of us, regardless of where we are politically, because we don't want to deal with the current occupant and his co-conspirators and his BS, like, it's not going to matter. They're going to take us all. So stop.
Yeah, little by little.
That's where I'm at.
Little
That's
by
where I'm
little.
at. That's where I'm
Little by
at.
little. So, Nita, thank you for joining us. I'm more than happy to have you on again, but I know you have something to take care of, and I'm going to bring in Jason. And at the end of this conversation, I do want to finish it up with some actionables that people can actually take along with making those phone calls. So
Nick can actually talk about that because it's actually a joint action between my organization, Disability Community for Democracy, Sick of This Shit Publications. Can I brag on myself for a minute before I go?
Absolutely.
So Disability Community for Democracy has a publication called Nothing About Us Without Us. Disability Community for Democracy is 100% run by volunteers. We do not receive any funding from anybody but our subscriptions and people purchasing stuff from our store every so often. We now have shirts in our store that say No To Crip Crow and No to Jim Crip Crow, because there is this pipeline, especially in poorer communities, but even in wealthier communities, that if you're a person of color and disabled, it's a special ed to prison pipeline. So I made shirts for that for Disability Pride Month. I said no to Crip Crow because of everything that was happening for Disability Pride Month. Those shirts are available. If you go to Nothing About Us Without Us, you click on the store link, it will take you to a website. All of that money does not go into my personal pocket. It goes into operating funds to fight back with all of our administrative costs. We are incorporated, so we have to pay for email and website and all of that. I was self-funding this last year, and this year, most of the expenses are covered by our subscription. So if you can afford to become a paid subscriber, do so. If you purchase the shirts, everything helps us. Also, the scripts that we're using, I wrote them. I wrote the scripts because Nick asked me to write them, which I was kind of surprised because I think Nick is a better writer than I am. But I think I might be.
I'm going to write the next ones and ask for your opinions back on them.
Yeah.
Because this is going to be more definitely collaborative throughout all of this. And I
Yeah.
really thank you for those scripts too.
So
And I
it's
do
first.
do some script writing myself. I put out one of the links, but I'm actually on the notes after we're completed today. I always do air notes, and within the air notes, I'm going to include some of those scripts as well, because people like scripts. It helps them to know what words to use in order to even when they're making the phone calls. So definitely, we'll put it out. I'll put out your Substack page. I'll put out all the information within the notes. So everybody will have that information. Once again, thank you for coming on board with us. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope to have you on again
And
in
I
the future.
really appreciate it. I'm glad that we were able to like link the threads together, because I do think that the housing thing is going to screw us, because we need more affordable housing, because we need specifically
It's bad.
more affordable, accessible housing specifically. Like I need it because I'm on a walker and use a cane and struggle getting in and out of the tub. So
No, I absolutely get it. I am a IHSS worker for my older son who suffers from epilepsy, who's had a variety of health issues, who is disabled, who would need housing. I would never want to see him out on the street. There are as many things that, this scares me. And to link it up with the SAVE Act as well, it's just taking more rights away from the people. So definitely more welcome to come on board. I do agree that we're not discussing it enough. I do agree that we're not taking enough action in order to stop this occupants, as you would say. I call it the regime. To stop what they're
the
doing
language is
now.
semantics. The language is
Right. It's
semantics
really
around the language.
semantics at this point. So thank you once again. Pleasure meeting you, by the way.
Pleasure meeting you, Nick. I will talk to you soon. Peace out.
Sounds good. Talk to you, Nadia. Thank you for having me on, Zora, for this discussion too, and for having
Yeah.
Naida on, because it's really important. We got to keep talking about this.
Yeah.
These things.
Sometimes I'm Jason. Welcome.
Jason, it's nice to
Alright.
meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Um, sickle cell is, I had 3
Zero
six-
cavities. How about that?
Shit.
That's right.
Awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
She had 0 cavities, but she's still got a baby tooth like caught, and they want to extract it. So they're going to give her a month to see if she can finish wiggling it out or whatnot. So took forever.
So thank you for everyone that has joined us. We will be running a little bit over today. I may separate the video into 2 different halves, or halves and a quarter. Haven't quite figured it out yet, because there is so much going on on right now. Now, as I stated at the beginning, I originally titled this Flooding the Zone. The yesterday, while I was scrolling through my Substack notes and everything like that, and I came across a note from Nick, and I was just like, well, damn, yet another thing. So I immediately contacted Jason. I I'm very transparent about everything that I do. So I immediately contacted Jason, let him know, hey, we need to really discuss this because it's about disability. Jason has his
Yep.
own disability story. As I was telling Nita, that we necessarily agree on approach. I basically had it basically informed her, as long as we agree upon the big issues and I agree with you 80% of the time, we're good to go. So I'm not one of those people that's very dogmatic in my approach, nor am I what I would just say. I used to say to people, especially when I was younger, I sound more emphatic than what I am. I see the nuance.
I like that. I like that. That's a
Yeah.
good way to say it.
I
I
did
s
catch some of the live, like hearing like your story, Nick, about how disability doesn't have a look, right? And like when we go to the store and I park in the handicap spot and I get out of the car, they're looking at me like, okay, well, it's not meant for just old people with disabilities,
Hmm.
So I get it all the time. And I was injured in 2008 at work. Um, I've had 2 back surgeries, neck surgery, foot surgeries, 3 hand surgeries on both hands, and 2 neurologists, uh, the neurosurgeon. I was hunting everywhere, right? So I finally ended up in the top neurosurgeon in the area here in Michigan, and he gets everything afterwards. He looks at it, and he just kind of looks at me and says, "How the hell are you walking?" Because the nerves from my hips down,
Hmm.
they're his words. I would expect results like this from a 90-year-old bedridden man. And I'm like,
I've heard that before.
I gotta walk, you know, and the older I get, the worse it gets. And I think people like me, I hide it the best I can. Can't always hide it though. It's rough, especially, trying to sleep at night. And I've been reviewed probably 6 or 7 times by the Social Security Administration. Um, all 6 or 7 times were under the Trump administrations, to the point where finally my doctor wrote the Social Security Administration, and he was very blunt. Um, he wrote them, and basically asked them a question: "What part of permanently totally disabled do you not understand?" And
Hmm.
from there on, you know, it was out. It
I
was
just want to
they
correct you
basically
on
left me
one
alone.
thing. On one thing, Jason, you are over 50 now, correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
With you being over 50, they stop asking.
Yep. Well,
I,
no, they
with
tried last year.
my
I have
th-
a feeling they're going to keep asking
and
nowadays.
this
Yeah.
in this regime or occupants or whatever way you want to describe it, yeah, I would agree with that. But my son, it's not like his seizures are going to go anywhere. If anything, they've been getting worse. Um, my son has to be reevaluated every 3 years.
It's
I
it's
find
stupid.
myself fortunate because I'm a disabled veteran
Okay.
and I'm a permanently and totally disabled veteran, and I cannot be reevaluated any longer because I reached permanent and total disability. And the veteran system is more stringent right now and strict at the moment on them reevaluating us and changing our disability ratings unless you're below that 100% threshold. And
Yeah.
even some folks at 100%, they don't get rated permanent and total disability. They just get 100% disability, and they can be re-rated at any time. I just have to keep seeing my doctors and making sure I go in for appointments
Yep.
to continue getting my care. And that's the only thing I have to do. But for folks who aren't in the veteran disability community, like I have so much empathy for like what you guys have to go through. Like, I can't even understand all of the paperwork and the reapplications and the over and over and over process just to prove that you're still the same or worse than you were before.
Yep.
Because disabilities that are permanent don't get better over time. They
Right.
only get worse. The body degrades over time anyway. So why would my disability get better? And Jason, it sounds like you and I could have a full conversation on
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
radiculopathy
Keep,
and neuropathy below the legs because I have fibromyalgia. And I responded to somebody whose post was the other note yesterday was like, what is the worst thing somebody has ever said to you as like about a disability? And I was like, immediately it came to my mind was you can't have fibromyalgia. That's a woman's disease. And I was like, the fuck it is. I was like, the fuck
I'm
it
not
is,
laughing.
and get your sexist ass out of here. Like, that's
Yeah.
some bullshit. Like, and so for me, I'm fighting through that stupidity of
Yeah.
we have to degrade women in this conversation too. Like, no, this is a human disease. We all have the chance to get fibromyalgia. Many of us have the chance. Anyone can get MS. Anyone can develop ankylosing spondylitis, especially if you have the genetic conditions for it. Anyone could have any of these conditions.
Parkinson's.
I got a
And
better
it's
one.
so bullshit that we like do that shit.
The
That is
Social
ableism.
Security.
Well,
It
they
took
do
me
it.
3.5 years to fight for mine. 3.5 years. When I finally got my court date, I didn't even have it because the judge looked at it and said, "What the hell?"
I can't even, like,
That's-
I didn't have
And
to go to
granted,
court.
no, I
No,
didn't either.
that's the
But they did
difference.
have to
That's
schedule a court date. My attorney called me and he's like, "We don't have to go to court." The judge took a look at it and his exact words were, "What the hell?" Because the Social Security Administration asked if there was something they could do to help regrow my nerves. I and it's like, it was right there in
Yeah.
the neurosurgeon. His name was Dr. Gracias. He's a prominent neurosurgeon. And he's like, yeah, we can't regrow nerves. They either regenerate right afterwards or don't.
Mhm.
And if they don't, you wouldn't think something so small in your body would affect you physically the way that it does.
So badly, yeah.
And it is painful. It is extremely painful. And when they sent the first letter of denial, they said, "We understand that you can't sit, stand, walk, stoop, lift anything over 10 pounds, but we think you can work your position, your old position, full-time job. We think you can do that." That was exactly what was in the bottom of the letter. I'll never forget it. And I'm like, all right, so you think I can drive around a 10-ton trash truck, yep, and get in and out of my truck 1,000 times a day?
Mhm.
Great. So I tried it. It lasted a half a day. And I said, nope, going home. Can't do it. Right? Because when I tried to get out of the truck during that time, and I was only in my 30s, I literally was falling on my face because my legs, it's like this weird feel. I try to explain it to people like, I take narcotic medication. Obviously, I don't abuse my medication. I never have, and I never will. My doctors have trusted me with it for well over a decade. When I take my medication, it's like the equivalent of coming in sub-zero temperatures. You're freezing. You put a warm blanket over your body, and it's like, oh, that's what it's like. It reduces the pain at least enough so I can function throughout the day. That's it.
with the opioid epidemic, as they would like to call it.
Yep.
Has it been easy for you to even get your prescriptions? I know many people have a really hard time even getting their prescription.
Girl, I got stories. Let me tell you.
Because pain is not real, apparently, and everybody
Yep.
who takes medications is going to become an addict. There are studies out there. Let me finish. There are studies out there that actually basically state that if you're actually using the medication for the true purpose of alleviating the pain
Yep.
itself, you are not going to become an addict.
Yep. That's exactly what my doctor said. So you got one of my points right there. The other
So,
point was I faked an MRI. That was one that I did. Somehow I faked it. I don't know.
How
But
do you
I was
fake going through an MRI? Like, that's a
I
pretty
have no idea.
memorable experience.
That's what my employer's insurance company said, right? For workman's comp. That's a whole nother story. I got jacked, whatever. But in the process of getting this, when we had the big opioid thing going on, I was my doctor's guinea pig because he said there was a study that showed that people who took narcotics such as morphine or Vicodin for pain, they found that they were in no more or no less pain. Like I don't remember what the percentages were, like 50% or something like that. When if they were on it or if they were off it, which means they thought it was contributing to the pain. And I said, well, what about the people that it did, like the people that
right.
still need it?
Right.
They're treating people in the disability community that take narcotic medication as a group of people, and they needed to stop doing that. They needed to start treating them as individuals. And my doctor loved it because he teaches at a college, and he's like, "I'm going to use that if you don't mind." And I'm like, "Go right ahead, use it." They tried to reduce me, and I'm like, "Okay, let's play the game. Let's do it." So
imagine,
I did it for years. So finally, my doctor said, "You know what? I'm not doing this no more. I'm not.
well,
I can see it."
imagine
So
being a woman trying to get pain medications. Do you know it's actually harder for a woman to get pain medications than it is
yep.
for a man?
Yeah, don't you not? According to the misogynistic and racist and eugenicist policies and ideas of medicine, is don't women feel less pain somehow? And don't like black women somehow even feel less
Feel even
pain than white
even
women?
less
Like
even less pain.
we need to get past. That's what like Naida and I were talking, and Zora,
And
we were saying before, is racism ties into it.
Yep.
Eugenics is racism. It's classism, it's racism, it's all of it built into one tidy little package that wants to kill all of us that are not fully able-bodied in their eyes. And it's not about are we able-bodied or are we worth anything? It's are we worth something to the capitalistic system and so that
Right.
they can make wealth off of our labor. It has
Right.
nothing to do with us. It is all about them. It's all about their power, their capital, their use of us as slaves or serfs or whatever, or corporate workers who require the only way you get health insurance is through a job. That is a form of slavery. That is a form of serfdom. That is a way to hold people back and ensure that poor and marginalized communities and disabled communities don't have access to the right healthcare, and we are segregated and discriminated against. Yeah, cogs in a wheel, and we're broken cogs. We're missing pieces. We're missing a lot of pieces, some of us. And that lot of pieces missing means we ain't good for them, and they don't care.
and they don't
And don't
care,
people
and
think
they're
that
taking away let me fin they're taking away from our autonomy, and that's really what they're trying to do is take away from our autonomy, take away our housing, take away um, our families as such too. So we're less than. And we've had this conversation before on Rig by Design, is I basically said we are living in a society of the haves and have-nots. And we are part of the have-nots. Jason.
We've always been part of the have-nots in their eyes.
always will be, unless we're not going to vote our way out of it. But um, I think people like the big thing is, people just they fake it. They want to be on disability just so they don't have to go to work and collect the money. Do you know how much I get every month? I would much rather, be out there making 6 times what I get. And literally, that. If I was still in my profession today, what I was doing, I would be making at like 9 times if I was still in the same profession I started in when I was in my 20s. A monthly, as far as a monthly salary compared to what I get from Social Security disability.
And if you were to start working And if you were to start working, they would take that disability away from you.
Just like that.
Immediately.
Because
Just like
apparently
that.
now you don't need it.
Nope.
But your disability is still there. You can't
Yep.
perform the job to the same level, say, as somebody who is fully able-bodied in some of these areas, or who doesn't have a disability that is causing them to be less productive. You
Right.
can't be as productive. That's okay, whatever. Like, being human isn't about how productive you are. You are worth something just because you exist. Like, the inherent value of humanity is you exist. And actually, Zora, I want to push back on the use of welfare queen, because that's a racist term too. And I know it's their term. I know it's the term
Yep.
that we all hear, but that one's another one of those that we have to, because it's targeted at Black people. It was always targeted towards Black people.
Reagan,
You're a
right?
welfare queen. Yeah. And for me, yeah, humanity's not up to debate. The idea of welfare is you're just a fucking thief. You're a criminal and a thief. And that's what you are. You are stealing wages and the wealth and the well-being of other people. Elon
Yep.
Musk is a thief. He's like, everybody remember that story of Robin Hood? We had a Disney movie about it.
Yep.
Where the sheriff comes into town and starts taking all the money. Yeah, that's him.
Yep.
And we just
I loathe him.
I loathe him too. And the people behind this are all eugenicists and assholes. Elon Musk is a eugenicist. He's a segregationist. He believes in apartheid policies. Stephen Miller, who is the impetus behind the DOJ Olmstead memo, who is the cause of so much of this, is a mini Goebbels. That's what he aspires to be. He is a Nazi. He's an Abrahamic Nazi. He's an Abrahamic fascist. He believes that we have no value. And he's the reason that the Olmstead memo and the Olmstead decision, one of the reasons, he's not the only, but he is a main driver behind why we have to say no to Crip Crow again.
Yep.
And talk about the Olmstead decision, because Nosferatu is still not bad enough to talk about Miller. Like, Nosferatu doesn't go far enough. He's just scum of the earth.
He is, and he's
Miller
in that
is
position
evil.
for a reason, because he's a scapegoat for future for who that's in the squatter in the Oval Office. He'll end up blaming him for all of it later.
Which in this case would actually be the truth.
Yeah.
Because Miller is the shadow president behind Donald Trump.
Yep.
It's not J.D. Vance, it's Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller
Yep.
controls more power than any single human being in the government outside of Donald Trump.
You can see it in his eyes and shit. He's like,
he thinks he's a big man.
Stephen Miller.
He's got micro ego syndrome.
Yeah.
You'd have to find his ego with a microscope. And if you don't know what ego I'm talking about,
yeah,
you can figure it out.
You betcha. I know what you're talking about.
He's got that micro ego syndrome, and he's using it to spew his inadequacies out onto other people. It's projection. He is an inadequate person, and he has to make everybody else feel inadequate around him. One of the ways he's doing that is by attacking disability rights and freedoms, because he wants to reinstitutionalize us. He wants only able-bodied people to exist. It also is a convenient excuse, and this is where the step further, and we all have to look at what comes after the first step, which is, first they came for the disabled people and nobody spoke up. And then they came for you because they turned your dissent into a mental illness and called you disabled too. And then they silenced you and disappeared you. And I've said it like every single show that I've been on in the last week, basically, is if you don't think that's true, go read a single book about what the Nazis did. Because step one was target the disabled community.
It was.
And then they moved on to everybody else, because then they had the convenient excuse of your dissent and your rage against fascism is a mental illness. Why do you think they call people on the left libtard?
Well, just
Why do
look,
you think they label Antifa as a mental disorder?
and
EDS.
talking about Antifa, look what just happened.
Hmm.
5 people.
100 years or whatever for
Right,
those
right.
veterans, compared to what, the 30 days in prison or some bullshit for that
For a
sex
pedophile.
offender? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's some. If that doesn't show
that
you
is
where
bullshit.
America's at right now,
Yeah.
that's bullshit. That is America right
You
now.
know, everybody, I think everybody knows somebody, whether they know they're on disability or Social Security, however way you want to throw it. I think everybody in this country knows somebody, and I really got, I mean, my story is no different than Zora's and, no different than yours as well. Like my sister lives with us too. She's 45 years old. She was born with cerebral palsy. Um, and she's been here, I think, 11 or 12 years now. Um, it was really, really sad to watch. I mean, her mom really wasn't taking care of her the best, but she lost her mom. We had the same dad, different moms, by the way. She lost her mom and her grandparents all within a year. All three of them, all passed away. Um, then our dad, our father, I should say, when that time came, nobody would step up. Nobody would step up for her. Nobody would fight for her. And they're like the decision that's being made now, if that had happened back then, they would have put her in a home. They would have just locked her away and forgot about her. But all of I always, call them my very Republican voting family. None of them, I can't take her. I don't, they all had the means and they all had the room, mind you. They all had the money. My wife and I didn't. At the time, we were still rebuilding. Again, we didn't have the means, we didn't have the room, but we managed. And we said, fuck it, we'll take her. She's been with us ever since. But then I got accused of, they just want control over her money. You think I want control over what does she get, $1,300 a month? I don't need control over that. That's ridiculous. Oh, her grandparents' house. Yeah, the one she sold for $30,000. How do you think, where do you think that money went? To take care of her. How long do you think $30,000 will last? Certainly not 13, 12, 11, 12 years she's been here. It's just, it's surprising to me, not surprising to me, but I find it astonishing how people will just throw people away or pretend to be, I love you, I care about you, your family, friend, whatever. And then when it comes time to cash that in, see ya. Not my problem.
Not to be facetious here, but didn't you know that we're all disposable?
I mean, we're talking back then. You always, the statements, right? If I knew then what
Can't
I knew
react to
now,
that one.
if I knew then what I knew now, would things be different? Probably. I mean, I was, at that time, I was just dumbfounded. And then, I let her go visit with the aunts and stuff for a while here and there, first couple of years. Then one time my aunt showed up after a visit. She gets out of the car. She's fucking 2 sheets from the wind drunk. And I'm like, she wasn't driving. She's like, oh, don't worry, I'm not driving. Yeah. They're all what I call functional alcoholics, right? And I looked at Nicole when she got in the house. I said, that's the last time you'll be going. If I don't take care of you the proper way and I allow you to go with that and something was to happen to you in that vehicle, I couldn't live with myself.
Yeah,
And shame on them for, drinking and driving and doing all that stuff. Shame on them for that. And she doesn't know better. She's never, ever going to be able to live on her own. Ever. She has to live with somebody. You can ask her, but the one thing she's good at, instead of talking about her disabilities, is she has got a memory. I swear to God, it's like a camera. She is. When the doctors tell her,
photographic
I got
memory,
an
huh?
appointment 2 months. Okay. She'll remember the date, the time, the appointment. She could tell you what I was wearing at a 1999 Christmas party. It's little things like that. I couldn't imagine being trapped in my own head trying to, speak. And that's her problem with her cerebral palsy is she can't. So she just gets frustrated with herself. And I'm like, Nicole, slow down. It's all right. Say what you got to say. And over the years of me doing that has worked. Her speech has gotten a lot better, when she wants to
That's
communicate.
I think that's
And
great, Jason.
she's got
Um,
two 12-year-olds here that, between her, my two 12-year-olds and my sister, man, they fight like sisters. So, you know,
I I get it. So what we're trying to do right now is discuss ways how we can address this DOJ memo, because this DOJ memo threatens to bring back segregation and force institutionalization. And so we really want to discuss how can we address this. Now, usually within our series, Jason and I have always spoken about you need to address this at the state level. But in this particular case, this is the one time I'm going to say this. In this particular case, I do believe that it's important that we actually contact the U.S. Representatives as well as both senators within your particular state, because we're all talking from
yep.
different states here. I'm talking from California. Nick, you're talking from New York?
I'm in Arkansas, but
Arkansas now.
yes, I live in Arkansas. I was from Vermont, lived in Washington State, and now I'm in Arkansas. So I've been around the country.
Okay, and
Born and
then
bred Michigander here.
so I do recommend that we actually urge our representatives and our senators to oppose the DOJ memo, which is attempting to undermine the Osmond decision. And so that's part of the reason why we're having this episode today. It's to tell you that there are options. Hold on one moment. And so I did put down the Capitol switchboard phone number. And in case you didn't see it, it's in the notes on the live chat. And the number is 202-224-3121. You will be able to find your representative's name and as well as your senator. I do also want to mention that Governor Pritzker of Illinois recently did sign his own thing into place called the Department of Disability Advocacy and Guardianship into law. Therefore, this is something in which states can act. So keeping them important, they'll also work with some of your state representatives as well in order to maintain some of the disability rights that you currently have, as well as elevate some of those disability rights. Because that's the one thing that we have to do. We have to buck, as I would say, the status quo. The status quo is not acceptable.
Yes.
I find it fascinating because it's. I remember watching this video of this elected official. I think he was a congressman, or no, maybe a senator. And he's like, I introduced this bill, and it was 15 points. Whatever it was, stops stock trading, stuff like that, right? And when I hear about policies and memos, it makes my brain turn, right? And I'm like, but it's not law, right? And my idea to him was, I wrote in his comment section was, I got a number 16 idea. How about sitting presidents can be indicted? Write that into law. And that's what needs
Yes.
to happen with the disability thing, right? Is it needs to be written into law. It needs to be protected, period.
And this is where one of the things we can do as a coalition and a group and different communities. And this is the first time I've spoken with either of you, and this is wonderful. And I'm glad we're doing this because we're bridging gaps. Like Naida and I are out here. Naida Green, she's in the chat with us right now again.
I'm reading her chats.
Is amazing. She is the founder and CEO at Disability Community for Democracy. She and I have become good friends over the last few weeks, and I'm so honored and thankful to know her. as well as the fact that she and I are partnering. Sick of the Shit Publications and Disability Community Democracy have partnered together to say no to Crip Crow, which is what this is. And we, with her help to write our first set of scripts for phone calls and email/fax templates, we have put out some articles. Both of us have put out articles at this point with the templates. I'm going to drop my article into the link to it into the chat. I've been doing it throughout. Inside this link, there are resources. There's the phone numbers for the Capitol switchboards for both Senate and Congress. There's also a link that will drive you directly to Find My Representative or Find My Senator, and you can call their offices directly. What I'm doing is working to get this message to all of the media companies that I know, to all of the large creators and platforms that I can and that I can get responses from. And I have had some incredible responses back. And I spoke with Jessica Denson just a couple minutes ago on my last show, or I guess half an hour, 45, whatever it was ago on my last show. And she is advocating for us and supporting us. We're working with others. I'm getting in touch with some really big names right now to try and get this message out there, because we actually have the power to do something. And that doing something is on the federal level. We can get them to codify the Olmstead decision into the Americans with Disability Act, into the ADA that exists right now, and shore it up, make it stronger. We can codify today, if they had the power or the will or the courage in Congress. And you know where they get that courage from? Is if 10,000, 100,000, 500,000 of their constituents started calling and calling and calling and emailing and faxing. And there's also links to a site called Fax Zero, which allows you to freely fax your representative or senator if they accept faxes, which a lot of them do. It's also really hard to ignore a fax because, one, it's loud as shit when those machines start going off. And two, they got a physical copy. You know they received it. You know they have it. They can't just put you into the spam folder in a fax. They legally have to read them. Legally, they have to look at them.
Yes.
And you know they get it if you fax it. You also know they get it when you call, because you speak to someone. And if you can't speak to someone, leave a message and then call back the next day. And so what we're asking, and what I'm doing, and I'm probably going to be busy on it hopefully soon again, is I'm going to be putting, as every day, we are going to be doing a session where people call. And I might miss it today because I'm literally going back to 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 back on all things
I
all
saw
day.
your list.
And I'm supporting, and I've got another show that I'm going to be supporting right after this. So I actually have to drop here in a couple minutes. And I'm reaching out while doing this to others. Like, I've been busy while I'm on all these shows. I'm responding to messages right now. I got an email address for someone who I'm super excited to be able to email, because his platform could make a huge difference. And we just need to be doing this. Everybody. Yeah. If you know somebody, if you are in contact, and this is another thing that I've been telling people, that's an actionable piece that you can do outside of calling your representative and senators. You have 3 phone calls to make. That's it. Takes 10 minutes, maybe 10 minutes to do it for all 3. The script is like 30 seconds long. Literally, you could be done in 5 minutes, if not less. The next step is, if you are a paid subscriber or a founding subscriber on Substack to a large platform, hound the shit out of them until they say no to Crip Crow. If you are a pay, and this is where and I hope you guys don't mind if I call out a specific media network on our side.
No, I don't care. Go ahead.
Is
Go for it.
Midas Touch. You have over 5 million subscribers.
Yep.
If you spent 5 minutes having your subscribers do a phone bank call right now, if only 10% of your subscriber base made calls, it's 500,000 people.
Yeah.
The Bulwark, You guys have what? Nearly 100,000 here on Substack? That's 10,000 people. Lincoln Square? That's another 10,000 people, roughly. Yo,
That's why I'm going to send it to Hawk because he has 1.1 million on TikTok and like a 500,000, I think, on YouTube.
yeah. If we get folks like that, then this is where your power comes in too. I don't have Glenn's contact information, but if someone is a founding subscriber or a paid subscriber with Glenn Kirshner, please do contact him. Let him know that Nick Parrow would like to reach out to him. And please drop my name, drop our names, tag us with them. The script, Amy, is in this link that I just dropped. It's also on my publication, pinned to the front page for Sick of This Shit publications. So if you go to sickofthis.substack.com, you can find it pinned at the top of my page. It is a call to action, say no to Crip Crow. It has the phone script in there. It also has your email template, which you can reuse as a fax template. There's one little segment in that email template that says, please fill with your experience. Do that, because making it personal makes the difference. If you're a founder with Brian Tyler Cohen or Adam Mockler or any of those, Aaron Parnas, folks like that, contact them, because if you all start doing it, they'll respond. Social pressure works. And that's what we're doing
It
for
does.
Congress. It is the largest social pressure experiment that we have in our nation is Congress. Oh, don't worry. I've already talked to Ellie. Don't worry.
Good.
Ellie Leonard is amazing. I talk to Ellie all the time. She's a good friend. And she is helping support me get this message out too and putting me in contact with people. So do not worry. I am going
Yes.
to be You're going to hopefully be seeing me on a lot of things because I'm reaching out to people as much as I can. And you're going to be hearing about this. Jessica Denson is going to be talking about it on her Lights On tomorrow. I have been in contact with her. I just spoke to her a little while. Dean Blundell, I've spoken to try and get this message out. Lev Parnas, I work alongside. I'm his tech support guy, and I'm going to be discussing it with him to make sure that he continues to talk about it. Naida Green is going on with Miles Taylor next week. I'm going to be going back on with the Daily Whatever show next week with Lawrence Winterman and Dana Dubois to get the message out on their show as well. They're huge fans and friends of ours. We are reaching out to everyone. It is your opportunity to do the same too.
Absolutely. This is everybody's responsibility. I want to put it out there. And what Nick just did was gave you the tools in order to act. So the tools are out there. I will be putting within my notes all the tools along with the scripts that is recommended by Nick, as well as the links to the actual memo itself that came out from the DOJ. I did pull that up. I do have the PDF file. So
And I have it linked in mine as well. And all of the links from Naida Green for the Disability Community for Democracy, I link their official statement on what's going on and Crip Crow and the denouncement of it. And again, this is something we can actually fix. This is something we could codify into law. It could be codified tomorrow. If 1 million people call Congress today, they might actually work on it. If 1 million people then called Congress tomorrow too, they would work on it because they would have no excuse and they can't lie to that many people.
So
And
let's
I know for other people, the fact that we have to do this is absolutely apprehensible. It shouldn't shock anybody, but this can't kind of, for me, like everything that Z and I have been working on since we started this, when this dropped, I'm like, of course. I mean, my first thought was, going to Hitler. That was my first thought.
Mm-hmm.
That's people think it happens like it's going to happen in a couple months. No, this shit takes time. I mean, if people actually read the history, they'd learn that Hitler didn't, it didn't happen in 6 months. It took them years. And if we don't do something about it, that's where we're going to end up. The power of the people is greater than the people in power.
And I
Yeah.
do like that. So, Nick, I understand that you're going to need to go. I do want to thank you for coming on board in such short notice. I had to move this show in less than 24 hours, right? I get
Yeah.
this.
I think it's wonderful that you did this. Thank you.
So I do appreciate you coming on board. Anytime you're welcome to come here. I'm sure Jason would love to come on your show and talk about some of his issues. We would
Jason,
go.
you'll be
Anytime.
getting a message from me. I do a show called Intelligent Masculinity that is a better humaning series, and I'd love to get to discuss your experiences on
Awesome.
it. So I'll be reaching
Anytime.
out.
Good.
So I think that will be a good fit. And anytime that you need me to come on your show, I'm more than happy to do that. I talk a little
Absolutely.
bit more.
Thank you.
I rig everything. It's rigged by design. I do talk about the systems, what's going on behind the systems. And what we do here on Rig by Design is we combine the micro with the macro, and then we show how the exo comes involved in it. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not working.
Right.
Exactly.
I like to say everything is fucked, but we got to go with rigged by design.
We did have a show on Everything is Fucked.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
So we
Yeah, we
did.
did.
So I do want to thank you for coming on board with us today. I really appreciate your thoughts on this, as well as making everybody aware of the Olmstead Act and that it can be codified into law. And that's something that each one of us should have an opportunity to work on. And then, Jason, for a final thought, what keeps you going when the fight does become hard? We are bucking the status quo now. So, what keeps you going?
My kids. My kids. I mean, I've got grown kids, I got grandkids, I got kids in the middle, all daughters. I fear for their future. I fear for, this true type of Gilead society that they may end up in if people don't do what they need to do. Being a dad of all daughters is, I always say that guys like me, we're a different breed. It's when you have one daughter, you have one daughter. Then you have two. Like me, I have four daughters. I have a granddaughter. I got another granddaughter she'll be here next month. I'm excited. Right?
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I fear for their future. I fear for their future.
And so, and
And
then,
disability doesn't have a look. That's it. I'm
no,
done.
No.
no,
You're
it
looking
does
at it.
not.
You're looking at it.
And for me, my thing is one thing that's people can do this week. I'm going to say, listen to Nick on this one, not just do this week, do 3 phone calls a day, 10 minutes, 3 phone calls a day. That will increase the numbers, that will actually get heard within Congress. Make those 3 phone calls. I did put the number out there. I will put the number back in the air notes again. So there's a lot that will be coming with the air notes today, but I do appreciate everyone coming on board and sticking with us for the entire time. We were a long show today. I will break it up in halves. I'll just have to figure that part out. And we'll go from there. Thank you, everyone, for joining Rig by Design. If you haven't subscribed to me, go ahead and subscribe to me. If you haven't subscribed to Jason, go ahead and give him a subscribe or follow. And of course, subscribe to Nick if you're not already subscribed to Nick. And then I'm not going to forget Nita, who is probably still online. Go ahead and subscribe to them. Lots of subscriptions, but do it. We do all kind of cover different aspects, but at the same time, we're all fighting for the same cause here. So thank you for joining Rig by Design. Looking forward to seeing you next week again. Take care, all. Yay. And end.